Hi everybody, hope you're all alright, especially you Iron fans out there. Been a bit of a loss this weekend with no game. It's been a bit strange. So today I'm going to touch on sport a bit, but I'm sort of asking the question over the weekend with everything that's gone on with the Gary Lineker escapade and everything. Does politics come into sport? Big question out there. It's very, very mixed bag of people out there. I've had my critics on my views, as you well expect. It's a free country for everybody to think the things that they think and the things that they believe. But I thought I'd do a little bit of a video just to explain the reason I think in the way I do and why I think politics should be allowed to be spoke of in the sporting area, because at the end of the day, politics is life. Everything around us is politics. Politics affects us in so many ways. We don't even realise it half the time. We take every aspect of life as for granted. And whether you're a rich person, a poor person, or a person who's down the middle of the road, all these things are political. If you find yourself at the bottom of the pile in poverty is the scourge of the world, and it's what creates every single issue in society. The starting point is always poverty. So when I say why I have an interest in politics, I've always fought for change and to eradicate poverty all around the world. It's not just a British issue. It's worse in some places, but we're very bad at it as well. It's the way governments run, and we all have our sides. And I'm not going to criticise everybody. We all have parties that we follow. At the moment, for me, I've got to say I'm not particularly struck on any of our major parties. Particularly, I've never been a Tory. I used to be a member of the Labour Party, but I see the Labour Party as no real different to the Tories anymore. In fact, in some cases, I think they're absolutely worse. I ain't got a great deal of time for the Liberals. And as I say, coming back to the Gary Lineker thing, I'm not Gary Lineker's biggest fan. He's a very rich man, and I get that, and I understand that. But I do believe he's right on this occasion, and I believe everybody's got the right to have their opinions, whether it's in public, private, whatever. I don't see a problem of anyone being allowed to air their views. I don't particularly like the far right. I don't support anything to do with the far right, but I wouldn't say to them they're not allowed to have a platform or air their views. It's their legitimate right to have the views that they hold. I will stand up and I will argue against them all the time. That's how it is. But they're entitled to that view, which, it brings me to the Gary Lineker situation. He's basically made a comment about asylum seekers, and the language being not unlike that of Germany in the 1930s and the rise of fascism. And he was correct in what he said. Nothing about what he said is wrong, and I believe he has the right to say it. I'm sure there's many out there who'll come on here and disagree with me, but that's what life's about. We debate things and talk about these things. That's what life's about. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But the problem is with a corrupt government, and that's what we've got at the moment. I think even large swathes of Conservative voters, and even people that are members of the Conservative Party, know that this government has been corrupt on so many issues. It's lied so much. It's unbelievable. I don't think we've ever known such a corrupt, lying, deceitful government ever. And what they want to do, and it's tried and tested by many governments over history, is when they can't get anything right, they're flagging in the polls. They're looking at a disastrous election whenever that comes. They want to prey on people's fears, and they create fears that are not really there by blaming others. They blame ethnic minorities, gays or lesbians, asylum seekers. Should we call them expats? Because something other people don't seem to pick on, is when British people go to other countries, like en masse in Spain, Portugal and other countries, using other countries' health services, because they're generally British people that are retired. We don't call them asylum seekers or immigrants, we call them expats. Do you see the hypocrisy there? Even if you're hostile to asylum seekers and other people coming into the country, you've got to acknowledge that's something noticed, that the way we work. It's an hypocrisy. The people that we all need to be thinking about, if they're wanting to make blame for the situation in people's lives, why people are struggling with the cost of living, poverty, etc., you have no further to look than the billionaires and millionaires that are running the corporations, that are running all the quangos that the government have set up, and all those organisations run by their friends, and this includes the BBC, run by a chairman that's donated £400,000 to the Tory party. One of the BBC guys actually stood as a Tory candidate in Fulham. These people, they have made the BBC into an arm of this corrupt government. So for me, it goes bigger than the problem with Gary Lineker. Whether you like Gary Lineker, whether you disagree with what Gary Lineker's said, this goes above and beyond that, because as taxpayers we pay for the licence fee of the BBC, so it is supposed to be impartial in one sense, and they're saying that Gary Lineker isn't been impartial. But the hypocrisy of it is when people like Andrew Neil, who used to be the political correspondent, editor of a far-right magazine, Alan Sugar, who used his Twitter feed for his own political beliefs, you've got Clarkson, all been able to have their political opinions. But of course their political views are somewhat different to Gary Lineker, who, I mean, I wouldn't say Gary Lineker's somebody of the left, but he's certainly, I would say he's a liberal. But at the end of the day, there's an hypocrisy there, because these people have been allowed to get away with it, and I think the BBC have shot themselves in the foot. And what I'm saying to people, what I'm doing on Monday, as is I've seen on some of the YouTube people are doing like a blanket ban on any BBC programmes throughout Monday from midnight tonight till midnight on Monday, to not air any BBC programmes. I'm going to take part in that as well. It might not be a big thing, but it's just to show the dissatisfaction, and I believe that the hierarchy of the BBC should be resigning or sacked. And yeah, that's where we are, and I'm sure there'll be many people out there disagree with me, but feel free to send your comments in, and I'm just saying where I think we are in the world at the moment, and you have the right to disagree or or agree, whatever you want, but that's my view on it. And I think as ordinary people get to know who the real enemy are, the enemy of the people that are struggling in all forms of society, the causes of that are those big rich corporations, corrupt governments, and all the quangos and bodies around it. And I include people like Keir Starmer and all that. They're not serving the interests of ordinary people. But don't blame ethnic minorities, don't blame asylum seekers, people that are trying to flee horrific circumstances in other countries. The vast majority of the asylum seekers that we have come from places like Afghanistan, where we've been there for the last 20 years. A lot of them worked for the British government and helped serving the British forces. The damage that we did in Iraq under Tony Blair, Syria, Libya. There are so many countries where people don't think of them being at war, but they're under tyranny and persecution for their political beliefs. And this goes right to Eritrea, and you look at Yemen. There are people all around the world. If anything, the world leaders need to get their act together and stop making the world such a horrible place where people want to come here. But, you know, we have such a bad asylum system that they purposely make it fail so as they can now try and cram people into all these hotels, particularly crappy hotels run by Britannia Hotels, and make it look like it's threatening. They put out stories that these people are rapists and paedophiles, and I'm not saying that there aren't some in among these people, because there's good and bad in all at the end of the day. I mean, for God's sake, we had Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris and numerous others that had free reign in the BBC, and these were allowed to get away with what they're getting away with. So be careful who you blame and who you sympathise with, and try and have a little bit more heart and compassion for desperate people. They're not all bad. I would say 95% of them are decent people, many of them with skills that we need in the country, like doctors, nurses, drivers. And then those people that aren't necessarily, they're prepared to work in the fields. We've got crops rotting in the fields. If you come from one of those countries that we already recognise as a dangerous place to live for people, speed up the asylum system, get these people into a home, and don't think there isn't room on the island. Only 1% of the UK is inhabited by people. 1%. We could build 100 new cities and it still wouldn't be full. We could build the infrastructure. We could create all the jobs of building homes, hospitals, schools, infrastructure for these people. And when everybody that comes on, be it from the right or the left, talking about we need growth, the fastest way to get growth is utilise all these people that want safety. They want to create a decent life for themselves. And when they do that and we give them a job, they pay taxes into the system, which then helps go pay for our public services, enabling us to give nurses, doctors, firemen, all those people in the public sector that need a decent pay rise. And let's be clear, a pay rise for everybody in the public sector that have asked for pay rises this year, the cost of that is £27 billion. And then a lot of that, once you've given them that pay rise, will come back in the way of taxes, etc., and good services. That's where you get your growth from. It's the only place we're going to get the growth from, because we're also an ageing society, as is Germany. So what I'm saying to people, please Google, research your facts. Don't take in the propaganda that this government spin out. You should know by now, irrespective of where you stand on the political spectrum, that all this government will do, they'll lie, they'll cheat, and say whatever it takes to get elected so as they can behave, keep all their mass amounts of money, and behave like they have been behaving. Just research it, please. But yeah, take care, everybody.